Hi, Kendra. Welcome to Jeff's Podcast Academy Season 9. You're actually the second person here on my Season 9, which I actually started exactly 9 months after. It's kind of my, fourth or fifth year in my podcasting journey. And I'm really happy that I'm starting Season 9 and, one of you as my early guest. So thank you so much for being here. It would be great for my audience to know, what you do, who you are, behind the scenes.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here and to be on your season 9 of your podcast. So, like I said, my name is Kendra Swalls. I am a former teacher turned entrepreneur. I started a photography business back in 2012. And then that grew to the point that I left my teaching career behind and ran it full time. And then that evolved into helping teach other female business owners and entrepreneurs how to grow and market their business. And then I launched my own podcast, Girl Means Business, in 2019, where I share weekly kind of business and marketing tips with solopreneurs, creative entrepreneurs, anyone that's just kind of trying to balance the idea of I love what I do for my business, but I don't know how to get it in front of people, and I help them do that.
Understood. So, girl means business. The one thing I found is that I've interviewed a lot of people. Actually, I even had a whole season for 10 episodes of interviewing, female entrepreneurs, and I really find it fascinating that a lot of people are actually in the rise tonight. In these few years. So, what if you want to say one thing for those people, who can be a mom, who can be sister, who's trying to be, trying to grow in their own digital space, being a woman, what do you want to say to them? Any one particular stuff?
Oh, one narrowing it down to one. I would say that you are not superhuman. And so just understanding that you're trying to do a lot of things and wear a lot of hats, and it's okay to ask for help, and it's okay
Mhm.
to look to others and say, how are you doing this? Because what you see on the surface is just the surface. And so asking for help, asking questions, not trying to do everything on your own or think that you have
Mhm.
to have all the answers to everything on your own is really important, because it can start to feel overwhelming and then you start to feel burnout. So just asking for help and being willing to kind of listen to others that have gone before you.
Got it. And I think even in one of your Instagram pinned post, you mentioned like don't try to do everything. If I'm being correct.
Yes.
Awesome, awesome. So, Kendra, as we mentioned, we are going to be talking about the Instagram for podcasters mainly. And to be honest, I'll just tell you one point of view that I have right now. There's a lot of trending things that are happening in Instagram, but I kind of solely believe on creating content, around value, which I did for a couple of years, not very consistently, but I did for here and there, and I did see some level of traction and increase. But recently there's been a lot of these trending things, like using trending audios or creating only reels, things like that. So as we deep dive into this conversation, let's start with this question. Which format do you think works well on Instagram for podcasters? Because there's a lot of formats right now for a lot of creators, different places. But which format do you think it actually works? Is it reels or images or carousels? Which one do you think it works for podcasters?
Yeah. So, yeah, and I like to kind of think of the different features on Instagram as like little neighborhoods. You know, you have your feed, you have stories, you have video and reels and lives, and your audience is going to interact in those different neighborhoods in different ways. And recently, had you asked me this question like a month ago, I probably would have had a different answer than I have now, because Instagram has recently come out and said that they were like, "Look, we realized that we put a lot of emphasis on video in the last year, and that maybe was too much of an emphasis, so we're trying to rebalance, how much we're showing or recommending video versus static images and carousels and things like that." And with that shift, what I'm seeing more becoming more and more engagement worthy, I guess, are like carousel posts where you're able to actually get information and consume information in a little bit more of a concise way. It's less of like the I'm just going to swipe through a video, because the thing with reels can be helpful, but with podcasts being such an audio platform, it's hard unless you're recording like a video aspect too, it's hard to have a video component that's really gonna be compelling. And so and a lot of times with reels too, people are just swiping through. They're not really fully paying attention. They're not always, there to, like, kind of absorb information. So I have found that carousels are a really great tool, and you can use them by kind of having like whatever your sort of big hook is for your episode, have that be your very first slide. And then throughout the slides and the carousels, you can share kind of the highlights of that episode, like get them excited about what they're going to hear in your episode. And then obviously have your call to action be, that they can go to your link in bio to listen, or you can use a keyword automation where they can just drop a keyword in the comments, and then that you'll send them a link to that episode in their DMs or however you want to do it. But to me, I'm seeing a lot of traction right now. Now ask me again in 6 months and it may all be different. But at the time of this recording, I think carousel posts and maybe even some like audiograms like done as a post on your feed could be really beneficial.
Yeah, that makes sense. And just to add to that point, I think the major aspect of identifying the results of these posts is, whether we need to know able to track, right? Like previously, I think we used, I mean, this is way before this bit.ly links, bit.ly. People use these
Mhm.
links to track the number of clicks and, impressions and everything. But how can people use, for example, if you post an, let's say carousel regarding highlights of today's podcast, and then you want them to reach out to you, or you want them to go and check out your podcast, so how do you track the result of it? Do you have any take on that?
Yeah, so I do think it is hard because especially if you're just linking directly to like your Spotify or your Apple podcast link, it can be hard to track that. The Bitly links are still kind of useful. You can put those into your link in bio, and kind of a lot of people do like those link pages. So the link is not actually shown, it's just like a little button. So you can track it that way. That is somewhat helpful, but it's going to accumulate over time. So it's not specific to that one episode necessarily. I personally really love the use of, like I mentioned earlier, that keyword automation. So I use a program called MiniChat, and it allows me to say, like, okay, let's say I have an episode that's about Instagram tips. I can then go in and post, my carousel or my static image or audiogram or whatever it is. And my call to action can be, hey, reply or you drop a comment down below with the word Instagram, and I will send you a link to today's episode or this week's episode. And then it automatically sends them a message with a link to that episode. And then within the mini chat, but like dashboard, the back end, you can kind of track how many clicks are coming through that particular automation. So that helps to sort of single out that one post and get you information that way. The other thing you can do is if you're posting it to your stories and you add a link sticker into your stories, then you can track how many people are clicking that link as well.
Great. And I think Instagram has this feature of send message also, right? Most probably there's a lot of creators out there who is creating a call to action saying DM the word rich or DM the word podcast to get the today's episodes. So probably, they can use that send message feature as well. So, it's pretty straightforward. So you don't have to go to the profile, click message and then send, right?
Yeah, it kind of removes that barrier to entry. We want to make it as simple as possible for our audience to get the information they want. And so that DM automation is really helpful because they don't have to, I used this example the other day of if I post something and I say, okay, here's, you know, the information about the episode, click the link in my bio. They then have to stop what they're doing, which is scrolling through Instagram. They have to click on my profile, then they have to click on my link in bio, then they have to click on my podcast episode, and it's taking them completely away from the app, the platform. So, and Instagram doesn't want us to do that. They want to keep people on the platform. So by sending them that link directly to their DMs, they can keep scrolling knowing that link is there in the DMs, and they're able to come back to that when they're ready to actually listen. They don't have to stop their scrolling. Instagram's going to like it more because they're like, oh, you're not taking people off of our platform right away. You're just taking this conversation to the DMs. And then that link is there saved in their DMs for them to go back to when they're ready to listen to it.
Awesome. Yeah, but that makes sense. And just to add one point, so I recently saw this guy on Reels, and he mentioned that if you want to talk anything that's sounds believable, then make it sound like a podcast. He said that in a way that it's kind of sounding like a podcast itself. That was it was pretty interesting to hear, because imagine, I've seen a lot of people on Reels these days where they sit, not exactly in front of a camera, but having a side angle, and they actually have the Shure SMB microphone, and they have a great background and all these things. And these setup actually give them an authoritativeness, right? Even though they have no
Yeah.
idea what the subject matter is, and they put just with the captions, they do all of these things, and that's blowing like really high. That kind of content is blowing really high. But I do question the authoritativeness, like whether what they're saying is true or not, because I don't know, it's just my maybe my paranoia or my anxiety every single time when I watch some informational content to identify whether that's true or not. But what do you think? Do you think like there are still authoritative, I mean, proper people who put out content out there, who do these kind of stuff? Do you think that?
Yeah, I mean, I do think it's a trend that I see going around, and what's really funny to me is when I see the ones where they are like trying to make it look like they're talking on a podcast, and you can clearly tell the microphone's not even like attached to anything. You're like, okay, this is a setup. But I I think that there is some validity and there is some credibility that comes from the podcast aspect. Like it does give you a little bit of authority and it makes you look more like an expert in what you're talking about. I would say if it's done in the right way. Now, I like the ones where you can have someone talking, like you and I having this conversation. If we were to turn this into a reel, if I was videoing myself right now, talking into the microphone, and on my reel, I have my side, but then I also have your side coming in with the audio, creating like an audiogram type clip, that to me gives a little more credibility because then oh, it's not just her pretending to talk on a podcast. She's actually conversing with someone and it's a conversation she's having. So I like that kind of thing. And it's also it's a little different. That my whole thing is when I'm scrolling through reels and I see the same thing over and over again, someone pretending to talk into a microphone to sound professional, I'm like, ugh, another one, another one. But if it's someone actually having a conversation, it's going to make me stop and listen. So anything you can do that hits on a trend that's happening right now, but then just adds a little extra layer of like something different or a little twist to it, I think that helps to even boost your credibility even more because they're like, oh, she's not just copy pasting what everybody else is doing. She's putting her own spin on it. That's going to make it stand out.
Got it. And I think with the proper CTA at the end would also really work. I mean, sometimes people, when we record ourselves and at the end we'll say, okay, go and listen to this podcast. Because I think when a guest is invited to your show or you're doing your own podcast, it takes a lot of knowledge, research, courage, to do such things, right? So yeah, maybe proper CTA would also, give some credibility. And yeah, thanks for your point as
Yeah.
well. I think that would be really helpful. And since we're talking about reels, this since you're an Instagram expert, I really want to ask this, like this trending audios. Okay, I'll be super blunt.
Mhm.
Okay, I'll be super straightforward. I hate those. I just hate those. But still, I actually want to try it out and see how the trend goes. So I did it, and I really did good level of engagement, with some of my content, and it's good. Okay, the engagement level is good. I'm not saying it's pretty bad, but it doesn't make sense to me. It still is not making sense that people, putting, too much different audios that they call trending, and they get trending just because mentioning that something is a trending audio. So is there any scope for podcasters to get for this? Anything that you have?
Yeah, I'm in the same boat as you. The trending audios really kind of irk me. Like they were great in the beginning when TikTok and Reels were kind of first coming out, and I always say like if you are brand new to putting yourself on camera and using a trending audio or using a voiceover helps you feel more comfortable in front of a camera, that's a great starting place. But if it's not going to help benefit your business, or if it's not helping you grow your podcast or your following or your listener base, then it doesn't have a purpose. And so to me, all the trending audios, or the ones that really drive me nuts, are the ones where like they're just showing you like, hey, here's a trending audio, and the reel actually is nothing. It's just, here's a trending audio. Like, go use it. Um to me, that's just like a cheap ploy for trying to get views. And my mentality is, I would rather put out a reel or a video or a piece of content that is going to provide value or be something that's going to appeal to my specific audience, even if it means it only gets 100, 200 views, versus putting out something that has zero to do with my podcast or my business and it getting thousands of views of people who don't really care about what it is that I'm doing. And so it's all, in my mind, it's quality versus quantity. I would rather have the one video a week or one reel a week that really reaches my audience than jump on these little ships. And I've seen people do it where I've heard stories of people that are like, oh, I did this trending audio and I got thousands or millions of views and I only gained 5 followers, and nobody, like, it didn't really increase anything. It was just a vanity metric. And they're like, what was the point of that? And that doesn't really do anything for you. So you're wasting your time, in my opinion. I would rather put that time and energy towards creating content that actually appeals to my audience and reflects on something I'm doing in my business.
Makes sense. I think the main context is that you just need to have a proper purpose in it. I mean, if that the purpose is to get more views, to get more likes, then yes. I mean, obviously people can go for that, because I have this one creator in my connection whose name is Shreya. So she's a copywriter, and she's pretty good at all of the things in the social media and all stuff. So she mentioned that when I'm explaining in detail a few things in reels regarding copywriting, it gets like almost like 5k views. She's having more than 80k or 100k followers, and it's getting only 5k views. But when she puts a b-roll and an audio in it, trending audio or something, and just put a normal text on it, it's going like million views. So as she mentioned, she clearly said that the second part is not giving me any results or whatsoever, but the first part will definitely give you the results that you need for the audience. Because when I got the trending audio, I got you know weird people like my post, really weird people, like those are
Yeah.
not my audience at all, really weird. I was like, what these see, there are a lot of people in my in my country. We have these different names for Instagram. So I'm sure, for example, My Life My Rules, that big guy on Instagram named My Life My Rules. So
Mhm.
that guy liked my post. I'm like, why? This guy was not my target audience, why? So yeah, I think that's one of the things that I really want to ask. But you know uh, but do you think that's actually a possibility that we can get leads using this trending audio? Do you think that's a possibility if it's like value packed?
I do think so. Yeah. I mean, I think if it's done right, and if you're looking for trending audios or you're looking at trends in general, and you're looking at it going, oh, I can take this and it will fit with a topic of my podcast episode, or it fits with something that goes with my business, then yes, use it, because it can. I mean, there is value in having, your video connected to that audio, because if someone goes to that audio page, the likeliness of them seeing your content gets higher. And so, yeah, I think it does have its benefits. Now, if that is your sole strategy for marketing using Reels, I would say mix in other things, but as long as it fits in with what you're doing. I use the example of, there's all these dance trends. I have 2 daughters, and my oldest one is kind of getting into like doing these little dance trends. I'm not going to go dance on a video, because that has nothing to do with, even if it's like a trend that's going around, it has nothing to do with my business or what I'm trying to promote. But I could see how some people get sucked into that idea of like, oh, what, all these videos that are doing this dance trend are getting millions of views, I'm going to do one too. It's not going to help your business. But if you can take it and maybe do like a cool twist on it, where it's like, I'm going to do this dancing trend, but I'm also going to be like, every time I hit this one pose or whatever, I'm going to be telling a different, piece of my episode, or I'm going to be sharing a different tip or value, that could be beneficial. So it's all about just spinning it so that it's not just doing it for the sake of views. You're doing it for the sake of, I'm going to take something that I know is getting lots of attention and I'm going to leverage that, but use it to help also like connect to my content.
Cool. Yeah, that makes sense. I think a lot of people, if they could actually provide the proper value, it would really, help them and also the people who's watching them as well. Exactly.
Yeah.
Great. So, let's just move on to this one important part for podcasters. And this is something that a lot of people ask me when creating their Instagram accounts for podcast, like a bio. Okay. For bios, when you are a podcaster, the issue is that unless otherwise you're an expert in that particular field, you can't put saying that, a hyphen expert, whatever that is, but you can put, let's say, a podcaster, learn more about these things, blah blah blah, and that's it. So what do you think is the best bio for a podcaster who is also an expert in this field? For example, I've been podcasting for 4 to 5 years. I can put a podcast expert. So if someone who's
Mhm.
doing podcasting and also teaching podcasting, maybe things like that, what is your thought on creating a proper bio for them?
So, my take on the Instagram bio is when someone goes to your bio, they're looking to see what is this account going to do for me? Like, what's in it for me? And so, I like to always start with like, think about what your podcast purpose is. Like, what is the purpose of what you're putting out there? So, for me, with my podcast, it's helping moms sort of take over complicated ideas and simplify them into easy marketing tips. And so I can put that in my bio and I can say 10 plus years helping moms simplify marketing for their business, and then I can put host of the Girl Means Business podcast. So the podcast piece is like, this is where you're getting the information, but the actual like meat of the bio is telling them what are they going to get out of listening to your podcast? Like, what are you going to be able to help them with? Because I think a lot of times I go to these bios and they'll say things like, well, the ones that really drive me nuts are the ones that are like dog mom, coffee lover, podcast host. And I'm like, that's great. It doesn't help me at all. Like, so I think if you can tell them, like, hey, by listening to my podcast, you're going to get X, Y, or Z out of it. Here's where you can find my podcast. And then having some kind of reason for them to click on your link. So I like to have, and granted, it all has to fit into the character count that they give you. But that first line, in my opinion, should say what it is that you help people accomplish. And then the second line can give them information about your podcast, so the host of, and then whatever your podcast name is, especially if it's different than your Instagram account name. And then have some kind of call to action. So, you could say, like, listen to the latest episodes here, and then, they have the link below. Or it could say, grab a free download of something here, whatever your lead magnet is. Or check out the top 5 tips for X, Y, or Z, and then it links to like your top 5 podcast episodes. So that's my kind of breakdown of a perfect bio. And then that way, when someone comes to your bio, it's not you just talking about you. It's you saying, here's how my content's going to help you. And then here's where you find that content.
Okay, yeah, I think that sentence is kind of pretty clear cut. So since we're talking the bio, this is a very thing that uncommon thing that I found on Reels is that people putting link tree, links on Instagram bios is not like working, or it's not giving them any reach anymore. I don't know whether that's very whether that's BS or actually a proper content. Do you think Linktree will? I mean, Linktree links will reduce the reach. Is it not working, or do you have any take on that?
Um, there's so many different schools of thought on that. A lot of people will say, like, just have one link directly to like a landing page or whatever it is you want to send people to. But in reality, a lot of times we want people to go to a variety of things, whether it's a website, a podcast, a certain episode of our podcast, or a lead magnet, or a freebie that we have, or training, or whatever. And so I am all for having like a list of links, but I do have some rules around how I do this. So one is, I think that your limit should be no more than 5 options of links for people to click on. Any more than that, and people are going to get overwhelmed and they're not going to want to click on anything because they're like, that's too much. I got to scroll 3 times to find the link I'm looking for. I'm not doing that. again, you have to make it as simple as possible. The second thing is, I think that with the idea of Linktree came around, it was a smart idea, and someone capitalized on this idea of like people want to have multiple links. Let's create a place for them to do multiple links. But Linktree is getting all of the traffic and the credit for that. So what I prefer to do is I create just a page on my website that's not visible. When you go to my website, the only way you can get there is through like a direct link. But I have my own kind of branded links, and I have about 4 or 5 links there, and I can easily switch them out what I want. But the benefit of that is that when someone actually clicks on the link in my Instagram bio, it's sending traffic to my website, which now I'm getting credit for, and it's helping to boost my SEO, it's helping to boost my visibility, and they now have, they're on my website. They have access to all the things on my website if they choose to go to those. So I think that the Linktree idea is really good. I just think that there's better ways to do it than paying or using a third party platform that is going to get all of your traffic that you want. Instead, bring that traffic to your own site, whatever. Even if it's just a single landing page, like that you build out somewhere, like at least you're getting the credit and the visibility for it.
Awesome. So this is a question I always ask my guest, out of the box one. Is it morning or evening there? What time is it?
It's around lunchtime. It's about noon.
Okay. So who was actually the last person that you made smile yesterday?
Ooh, that's a good one. Probably my daughter, my youngest one, because I was tucking her into bed last night, and she loves to like kind of laugh and play before she gets in bed. So she was probably the last one that I made like really genuinely smile yesterday.
Awesome. That's great. That's great. Cool. So, just coming out of the last section of the entire recording, the thing that we want to talk about is the running of ads. So, this is something that I even myself wanted to explore for a really long time. So, I'm sure the audience would love to hear your thoughts as well. Is that if you have a podcast Instagram page that where you have added content regarding your podcast oriented stuff, would it be beneficial for the podcaster to run ads for that?
Yeah, I mean, I think ads are always really helpful as long as they are done in a way that you have the right expectations from them. I think a lot of people run ads, especially if you're selling something and they're like, I'm going to run an ad, I'm going to get all these sales, and then they get disappointed when it doesn't work out. I think if you are running ads with the idea in mind that this is for exposure, it is for getting my content in front of as many people as possible who don't already know that I exist or that I'm out there. And if it's also like driving people to something, and with a podcast, it's really helpful because you're driving to them to something that's free. You're not asking them to take out their credit card or pay anything. You're just saying, like, hey, go listen to this episode. And then, within the episode, you can have whatever it is offers you have available and things like that. I think ads are great for that. And it's really helpful for podcasts because then you can also change it up. It's not the same ad every time. Maybe you have an episode that has done really well and you're like, hey, this episode is obviously really resonating with my audience. Let me see if I can get it to reach even more people. And so running ads for that particular episode or your podcast in general, or if you are, doing like an upcoming episode or a series of a couple episodes, or like you do seasons, like promoting your new season coming up, just keeping in mind that most of the time these ads are going to be generating exposure as opposed to like getting like a monetary return on your investment.
So it's better to run ads on this Meta ads manager, right, rather than boosting the ads, if that's correct.
Yeah, I think so. You have more control over it that way. You have more kind of, you're able to target more of a specific audience, and you can also do it on multiple platforms. Where if you just go into Instagram and you boost the post, you have very limited, capabilities within there as far as like you can kind of target certain people and how much you want to pay, but beyond that, you don't have a lot of control over how your ad looks. and then it's solely on that platform. So if you're boosting it on Instagram, it's only being boosted on Instagram. Whereas if you're using like the ads manager through Meta, you're able to do it on Instagram and Facebook and in different places on those platforms. Like if you go into your ads manager, you can see like how your ad's going to look on a Facebook feed, on a Facebook story, on a sidebar, in a in video ads. Like they have all these different placements for it that you are able to access actually a broader audience that way than you are with just boosting your post.
Understood. And I just want to add one thing to the audience is that when you're running these ads, make sure that you have a proper flow of things. For example, if someone is coming to your Instagram or someone is coming and clicking your page or whatever, just have a proper flow of what you want them to do next. I think that's where a lot of people keep lagging. They think that, okay, I'm going to run an ad to my Instagram, then people are obviously going to convert. But I think that people want to have, okay, if they're coming to Instagram, what should they see first? If they see that first, then what should they click first? If they click that first, then what should happen? So these proper workflows or each and everything would definitely help, because I've actually run a couple of ads, and one is for this webinar registration. I ran on Instagram, and I got really 70 or 80 something registrations, because I had a proper, okay, this is the call to action, this is the result. So yeah, just to add my point is that have proper workflows. I think that would really help for them as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. I do think because there are a lot of people who are like, well, I'm just doing it to get people to follow me on Instagram.
Yeah.
And yeah, you have to have a very specific, call to action of like, you want them to do this certain thing. And unless you're specifically saying like, go follow me, that's too,
Mhm.
even that I think is too general. I think you're right. You need to have a very specific flow and process of what you want them to do and the outcome you want them to get.
Exactly. So, Kendra, just coming on to the last section, this is kind of the main event that I wanted to ask. Being an Instagram expert, you must have known a lot of things. Do you have any predictions that, for the podcasters to catch on early ones, for their probably upcoming 6 months and become a trending guy? I mean, no assurances. I'm just saying, do you have any predictions on that?
Yeah, as I said earlier, their Instagram is kind of trying to get back to this nice balance of what kind of content you're putting out there. So I think my prediction going forward in with Instagram is just that it's always going to come back to the quality of your content. If you are just kind of throwing out content for the sake of like, okay, I need to post something today, let me just throw something up there, you're going to see less of the reach and the engagement that you want. I think Instagram is really going to start focusing on, how can we make sure that we're putting the best content out in front of our audience so that we can be known kind of as the best the best app, the best platform. So quality. I also think that, they're shifting. This is a question I get a lot around hashtags is they're shifting the idea of like hashtags are still beneficial, but I think the idea of Instagram SEO, which is like, the search engine optimization is really important. And so whereas like, and I come from the photography world where everybody just wants to post really beautiful photos. And even with podcasters, like they just kind of want to put up like a graphic or an audiogram and then just kind of say like, go listen to the latest episode or keep it pretty simple. The more context you can give your content going forward. So that means like adding really rich captions. Now, I'm not saying you have to write a novel, but having, really strong captions that have a lot of description and detail of what your content is about. Having or words and captions on your videos, using the alt text feature, all of those things are going to feed into how visible your content is when someone is searching. And I heard this the other day, which was fascinating to me. It was like 85% of people under the age of 30 are now using Instagram as a search engine more than they're using Google as a search engine. And that number like blew my mind. And so I think that more and more people are going to start turning to Instagram to look for, whether it's businesses or content types, that kind of thing. So the more content, like SEO rich content you can put out, the more likely your content is to be seen going forward.
Got it. And for the hashtags, I think till date I'm actually using hashtags for the search. For example, I'm kind of starting this new segment in this podcast, and in my own language, in my native language. And then when I wanted to get followers, not followers, but I want to search, okay, if other people are doing it, I put hashtag Tamil podcast. That's like the new segment, let's say. So when I do that, I get a lot of people who are actually doing the same things. Then I can interact with them and find those people. And I think that's a way that hashtag has been used, in a really great manner. But there are still people, I think, that has been using like 30 hashtags in their post, that they say that they've been shadow banned, or very weird mythical things. So yeah, I think if people can actually use just for the sake of mainly for the quality basis and search basis, yeah, like you mentioned, it would really be helpful for them as well.
Yeah, the hashtags, I mean, I'm not saying that they're not valuable. I still use them myself, but I think you're right. I think that like instead of just throwing 30 hashtags in there that you're hoping some of them will perform well, really making sure that your hashtags you're using match the content you're putting out there. Another really cool way I've seen hashtags be used really quickly is they're a way to kind of group your own content. So on my Instagram feed, and I actually need to be better about doing this. I keep forgetting it. I post a lot of different content. So I only have one or two posts a week that are about my podcast episodes. And so I will add in like hashtag GMB podcast. And then what I can do is I can tell people, like, hey, if someone messages me a question or whatever about an episode, I can say, hey, if you search for hashtag GMB podcast, then you'll find all of my podcast related posts and you can kind of easily search for the one you're looking for. So even using it as a way to kind of group your own content into a branded hashtag that you can then like send to someone and say like, hey, if you want to, see all of just my post about, Instagram, then use this hashtag and all of my content will be grouped into one sort of hashtag search. So that's another cool way that some people are using like branded hashtags. You just have to make sure it's unique enough that someone isn't going to come and sort of hijack your hashtag that you're using.
Exactly. So yeah, that's really great idea. Yeah, interesting. Cool. So, Kendra, thank you so much again, for hopping onto the show. Is there anything else that you want to ask me? Tables turned.
Oh, great way to, yeah, I love that. So kind of going along the lines of the question you asked me about sort of your forecasting for the podcast world,
Mhm.
what do you see, the future of podcasting becoming, because everything is so kind of visual now with like lots of video content.
Yeah.
Like, what do you see happening with podcasts going forward?
So, I think so. This is kind of a thought that I have. So this, which I really wish would happen. Since the what is that upcoming features of things like Chat GPT and all the things coming in. The one thing I found is the people who want to search something, they want a direct answer. They don't want beating around the bush a lot. So imagine that if in Alexa that we're asking a question, for example, what is a podcast, a simple question, and that cannot be explained better than a podcaster, right? So imagine
Hmm.
if Alexa is kind of getting that data or that text from a podcast website, then it makes sense. So if the podcasters can actually create content that's pretty specific, okay, because I really hate when people kind of beat around the bush a lot when they're asking questions. That's why even I write my blogs in a very straightforward manner. If I mention a question, I just still an answer. Maybe that answer will have 500, 800 words, but still, it's a direct answer rather than answering, mentioning what is the benefits, the pros and cons. That really doesn't make sense a lot. So I think moving forward with the podcasting, and with videos or whatever, if someone could answer a question directly without beating around the bush and not putting this loop videos and trying to get more attraction, just be straightforward, just be honest. If people could do
Yeah,
that,
I love that.
then yeah, I think if that's the case, then it would be really helpful for the podcast itself. I think it's just a thing that I really want, and I think people are kind of wanting that too. Maybe in business cases, it may not work because they want a detailed manner. That's where Google will really help, like with authority and everything. But for a vast majority of people who just want the information, then yeah, I think this would be really great for them. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, that's very true, especially because our attention spans are getting shorter,
Yeah.
and so the faster you can give someone information without, all of the fluff, the better, for sure.
Awesome. So, Kendra, thank you so much once again, for hopping on the show. And it's so sorry for all those, technical, faults and everything. And in case people want to find you and your services, what would be the best places?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This has been really fun. You can find me over on Instagram at Girl Means Business. And you can also find me at my website, girlmeansbusiness.com. And that's kind of my home base. So you can find the podcast information there, all my social links, blog posts, free resources, all the things there. So, yeah, those are the two main places you can find me.
Great. So, guys, I'll definitely link everything in the description below so you can go and check it out. And thank you so much again, Kendra. And I'll see you guys in the next episode.